It'll all work out, I'm sure. Got you all here, and we'll talk some Dune. How's everyone
Yay.
doing? Yeah, Jody's too good for.
I've been waiting forever.
Well, I was like, we actually went and saw this in the movies. So I was like, oh, I'm prepared. And then you were like, oh, no, I need to watch it again. And I was like, I will not be prepared by the time we get to it. I will have forgotten everything. So I was doing like some recaps earlier
Yeah,
No.
on
it's
everything
a
that
lot to
happened.
hold on to. Even if you go to it once or twice or three times, it's so many characters and so many underlining stories and planets that I don't think any of us has a full grasp on it, even myself who has read the book.
Yeah, I needed
But Philip,
to
you can
review
kick
it
us
all.
off
Yep,
whenever you're
we're
ready.
we're going on the
Oh,
Thodcast here on Dune Part Two. Jody and I discussed the first Dune film from 2021 and Denis Villeneuve, um, and we're wanting to definitely cover this one as well. A lot going on in the world of Dune, Arrakis. Yeah, this was a fun experience in the movie theater, and then recently came out on streaming on Max. So had to revisit it there before coming on to talk to you guys. Thoughtcast with me, your host Philip Elke. I'm here in northern Minnesota and joined by the two Zoomers from Georgia, Jody and Bridget. Thank you so much for you know as always your tremendous contribution to the Thodcast. Jody, you start since you're a big fan of Dune.
I'm a huge fan. This is the first sci-fi book I ever read, which I think was really fitting because it's the classic sci-fi Dune. And it's a really complicated story. So the first time I read it, I probably didn't know what I was going into. So I was really excited when the movie came out because I really needed those visuals to guide me. If anyone listened to us talking about the first movie, I did kind of struggle with the pacing of it, but Dune 2 like kicks it up a notch. Like the pulse quickens, the thumpers are thumping. Like I love this movie. I think it's epic and iconic, and I know that word is overused right now, but it's this sci-fi opera. It's gorgeous, and I could watch it again and again. I just did rewatch it, and I love it. And I feel like Bridget and I are like the Fremen. We're living down here in Georgia in the hot, hot heat, like trying to conserve our water each and every day. So that helped a lot because today it was super hot, and I was like pretending I too was trying to live on that planet. But I like it. I like the themes, and I'm excited to dig into it a little bit with you guys today.
Yeah, Bridget, what's your relationship to Dune?
So I actually had never read it, and I had only ever watched the cinema sins of like the original ones that were pretty bad from like the 80s. But my husband's read it, and so I watched the first one when it came out with him. And I remember thinking, like, what is this? I felt like it didn't answer any questions I had. I was like, I don't know what's happening. People are killing people. Now there's worms. I was like, I have no idea what is happening. So we watched the second one in movie theaters, and I did like it a lot more because I was like, I get that they were setting it up for a trilogy, but I always hate when they like give me the information because I had no, as someone who hadn't read it, didn't really know anything about it. I had no clue what was going on after the first one. And I was just like, okay. Like, and I don't like dislike sci-fi stuff. There are some things that I like sci-fi. Like I'm a big Doctor Who person. I like sci-fi, but I'm like, give me the answers. Give me some answers. Give me like a half answer. So yeah, so I very much liked Dune 2 a lot more than Dune 1. Dune 1, I was like, I don't understand, and now I'm confused. I didn't love it. But this one, we got some answers, things were happening, people were getting
Hmm.
stabbed, spice was getting got, so I was like, okay. And so like And then going into the third one, because I know there's a third one now, I was like, okay, so these are the questions I have for the third one, but I do have enough that I'm like ready to watch the third one. I will be interested to watch the third one.
I think
Okay.
it's so hard when they're building these complex like galaxies and kingdoms and empires to be able to catch on with everything. I mean, this one kicks off sort of just right away with Paul's journey. And what I kind of noticed in the filming, I guess the cinematography is the way they cut from scene to scene, they really do make the viewer fill in the gaps. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, hey, we're going to go on a walk. Let's start walking. The filming starts when they're already like halfway through the march, if that makes sense. And the first time I
Yeah.
watched it, I was like, this is going too quick. Like by the time I process it, like I'm not ready, but watching it the second time, it's good. I mean, whoever directed it, which Philip's gonna know the names of all these people. I know some of the stars because obviously this was a super star-studded cast, which I feel like it made it even better. Some people maybe were a little hesitant to have like Timothy Chalamet, like Florence Pugh, all of these huge names in it, but I feel like it made it even more real to have her as the princess and Zendaya as Shawnee. I thought it was really great. And what I love most about this second part is I like in this movie is really where Paul loses that innocence. And we start to see this white savior complex come in, which I'm sure you guys read about a little as you did the reviews, but we get to see like more of that manipulation and the power of women. And I just think it was such a strong sequel.
Hmm.
But Philip, what did you think? I suppose we kicked off with our thoughts.
Yeah, it definitely felt more propulsive in the theaters just watching this movie that had to accomplish a lot. And it's the better part of a 3 hour experience. So it takes its time a little bit, but yeah, it certainly covers a lot of ground. And it's kind of this epic culmination in the vein of like Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, final showdown with forces of evil, and having to see characters realize their destiny. It's it's definitely of a piece with the first Dune film. Um, you know, it it uh it just flows directly from that first film to this one, so it's really fortunate that they were able to just begin work on this one right away. Of course, it's such a grandiose, ambitious film that it took still took 3 years to get out in theaters because it wasn't a done deal originally. Warner Brothers had to wait and see how that first Dune film would perform before ultimately confirming this sequel. But thank goodness, it's now here, and it looks like there's another sequel in the works as well, according to online news sources. So we can look forward to more Dune at some point.
There's
Uh,
going to be a show too. There's going to be a series.
yeah, there's a series in the works.
It's
Um,
about the ladies, the Bene
yeah,
Gesserit people. They
okay.
were like the wildest part to me. I was like, all right, witch, evil witch ladies. That's like what I got from the first one. I was like, why are we stabbing
Mhm.
people in their hands? But yeah, so it's apparently going to be about them, which I'm interested to get some
Yeah.
like lore. I want some more info about these,
S-
I
the
Yeah.
think
matriarchy behind it all.
I think you're really gonna like it. In the book, as in the movie, they dive so deep into that sisterhood. And I think it rings true today, just like how women, the way that they have power, it has to be like secretive, it has to be quiet. And it shows them like plotting and planning for centuries. Ultimately, they do have control of what's going on in this universe, but they can't be loud about it. They have to sort of be a whisper in the wind or into someone's ear. And how real is that for women? Like you want to be powerful, but not a
Too
big
powerful.
powerful. You don't want to be too
Not in your face.
upfront with it. Yes, because that you're seen as a threat or you're seen as, whatever. And I mean, Jessica really taps into it the second she drinks the life water in this movie. Um, One of the themes I thought a lot about, especially as someone who just recently like had a baby, is like Jessica as a mom. Like in the first movie, she's has that maternal strength. She's guiding Paul, she's teaching him all these things in hopes of, keeping him safe and keeping him sound. And then sort of in the second part, you realize, wait a minute, like, is Jessica a good mother, or has she been just like pulling the strings so that she could be the mother of the empire of the world? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is her intention? And a question I have, and I'm sure this is going to just be full of spoilers, but like when they're drinking that water of life, are they tapping into who they truly are? Or are they like tapping into something else? Because I feel like for both Paul and Jessica, once they drink that blue juice and their eyes turn blue, you see this big shift in their personality. And I can't remember from the book, but do you guys feel like it brings out the bad in them, or is
Hmm.
that really who they were all along?
Hmm. It affects their humanity in a way where they're no longer mere mortals. Their perception
They
of
like
time,
ascend.
yeah, they've transcended time and space.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and they're like the water is just, the blood of the worms. And they're like, they're this like being that is basically ingesting this spice stuff all the time. So I do think that they're like, especially because Jessica has obviously her own powers as being a Bene Gesserit, but so it's like I don't know that it's necessarily it made them bad. I think it made her a little cuckoo crazy because it's like, I mean, how do you think your brain would react if you had all the information in the past, present, future? You know everything about everyone. And so, yeah, I guess you could kind of feel like kind of like a being that has like transcended. And you were like, basically, like, I'm kind of like a god. And so she's like, so for me to make sure all this stuff happens, he has to do this. And that's why she starts doing, little tricky stuff.
right. And it sort of does reveal, and I guess the reason why I was like questioning it is during part two, it reveals that like the Bene Gesserit, Jessica,
Yeah.
yeah,
The PG.
they have the
Benny and the
ability.
Jesuits.
Yeah, exactly. Da, 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 da. But like she had the ability to choose whether she was going to have a male or a female child, and she kind of puts it on her old, not old, but like dead husband Leto, that she wanted to have a son for him, but like they had been instructing her like you have to have daughters, you have to have daughters. And by her having Paul, she sort of went against that. And I don't know. I just like don't know if it's supposed to be for selfish gain or not, but maybe you're right. It's probably a little blurred because once you have all the information of the universe, everyone else's ideas probably just seem stupid. And you're like, yeah, I'll decide now what's what. And she gets those tattoos all over her face and she becomes like a real powerhouse.
Yeah, when I think a part of it too, and I can't remember if they addressed this in the movie or not, but from what I know, based on the book and the movies, is that she like basically because she is related to the Harkonnens, and like the whole theory conspiracy is that like it will be born of someone from Atreides and Harkonnen like together, because she's technically the daughter of the big guy. I don't remember his name. Big old guy, Stellan Skarsgård. That one, the really big one. Um, she knows that if she has a son, she has a chance to give birth to this like Messiah like character. And that's why she goes against it. And that's why they're like, what the heck, Jessica?
And
You weren't supposed to do that.
I think she didn't truly know that until she drank the
Yeah.
water because it's like, is destiny man-made or fate? And like in this case, I mean, it seemed man-made because she's basing it off of making her husband proud. But then like lo and behold, it's also fate because she is the daughter of the Baron. And I think that sort of is a question throughout this whole movie is like, are we creating our future or are we just sort of like going along the path that's weirdly laid out for us? And who's like behind the scenes? Like who's pulling the strings? Because it's very like Shakespearean seeing these parents do all of these things in order to get their child up a rung on the social ladder. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Um,
a
I
lot
just
of
I just thought it was awesome.
yeah, a lot of intricate craftsmanship with all that's woven in by ultimately Frank Herbert, the author, who has, involved all of these various moving parts with, I get the sense of like reading, and being enthralled by Harry Potter when I was younger, and how, there were all these various um, reveals and, sudden twists that would, kind of throw a whole new light on the situation, and just being floored by all these revelations. And it was always such a thrill having that kind of layered detail in your reading. And I got the sense of that here with details like, oh, she has to take the life juice, and oh, but she's also pregnant. So what's that going to do now? And like, the um, you know, downfall of House Atreides, and how they're now lost, and what hope do they have of ever, what hope does Timothy, Paul have of regaining legitimacy? And oh, it turns out he's also a Harkonnen, and just all these little things that kind of um, get pulled back, and you can tell that Frank Herbert, is trying to just build as much, audience captivity, captivation, as possible to really to build and to ultimately what is this very mythical story about the mechanics of the Messiah character, a character who is sort of an incarnation of
Religious.
of God. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it pulls together this political and religious power by being this character in their world. And what I what I love is how easy it is to go into it. Like Stilgar is this hype man kind of throughout the whole movie. He sees Paul as pretty much 100%, like anything Paul does, like Paul stubs his toe and Stilgar's like, "Oh, they said that the Messiah was gonna stub his toe." And then like Paul's like, no, no, I'm not the Messiah. And he's like, they said the Messiah wouldn't say that he was the Messiah. And so we
Yeah, yeah.
see that though in real life. I mean, you read about cults, you read about religion, you read about
I mean, you remember
this.
QAnon.
Yes,
It's not
it's
that far removed.
and they talk about, throughout the movie, they're trying to push Paul to go south where there's more like weak-minded individuals that he can gain control over. Whereas, like here, I mean, in the South, they're very captivated by religion and
The
this big,
fundamentalists.
But they're
yes,
very like
they're
rural too. They're
right.
like
This
separated from
let's
everyone.
yep, let's go south, let's gather the weaker minds. And it's just you can see so many parallels to our world. And I'm sure the writer was able to harness a lot of that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, a lot of real world parallels in
mhm.
this. And um I think yeah, there are probably plenty of differences between the novel and this current depiction. Certain characters are like gender swapped. I know the Shishakli, however you pronounce her name, that sort of secondary female character, and then the doctor in the previous film. Do you remember that character's name? Um, the
He was like
Which
an
one?
name,
Asian man, right?
or not the doctor, the sort of emperor's overseer of the change. She was a like a scholar. And why do I not have Dune pulled up here? Um,
I do,
There's
but I
the
don't remember
Baron,
which
and then
person that
there's like
was.
his
There's so many
lieutenant.
yeah,
people.
There's
yeah.
yes, and this movie
Kynes, Dr. Kynes.
Dr.
There we go.
Kynes.
Mm.
Yeah.
This movie really does bring in a lot more characters. I don't know who isn't introduced in the first one, but here you get to see so much more of them too, like Shawnee, which is Zendaya. You get to see her
Hmm.
shining a bit. But yeah, all these like the Emperor himself, like who
But
It's
Joaquin.
Christopher Walken. It's
Yeah.
Christopher
Yeah.
Walken.
Oh,
Well, no,
Joaquin.
Yeah.
because
I was gonna say Joaquin
Joaquin,
Phoenix.
yes,
Yes.
Joaquin
But
Phoenix.
in
Well, no, I think
incredible
like
anthropological study, though, not to get away from our topic, but yeah, Bridget.
yeah, well, there's a ton of people. Well, that's what I was gonna say. There's like a ton
Yeah.
of people who we didn't get to see, like the Emperor and his crowd. We see a lot more of the Bene Gesserit, and then we see like the nephew of the Baron, who
Austin
Austin
Butler.
Butler. Oh my
Mhm.
God. I was watching it and I was like, who is this? And
He
I
felt
was
like Zoe 101. To me, like he was when they said, "Oh, Austin Butler," I was like, "Who is this guy?" Luckily, I
yeah.
saw Elvis
Yeah, I knew he
or
was
I
an
saw Dune
Elvis.
2, and I was like, "All right, like he's a pretty talented actor. He's probably going to be amazing."
When he's like
But
good looking and they like made him, I was like, he's like
how do you
kind of like
make a
hot
bald
but
black tooth?
frightening.
Yes, I was like, "This is not my type. Like, what is going on?" And then
Yeah.
when you're in his world, there's an absence of color. I mean, I really like that too about his scenes is when they go to a different planet and you get to experience. Philip, I don't know if you know, is it because they don't have a sun or they don't have a moon or
They have a
Yeah,
black
I
sun.
don't
oh, they have a
know.
black sun.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's
they
yeah.
But you
well
get to
they so they oh
okay.
sorry. They shot it they wanted it to be like a black and white like infrared like kind of colorless. So they
Oh.
actually shot it. I think they shot it with infrared cameras so that they could have that kind of like translucent skin and like look to them because they're supposed to be like I mean they are people. They are people. All these people are people, but they're like, you know, way in the future. So people start to evolve. And so they live in a place that has a black sun. They don't get like exposure to real sun, I guess. And so yeah, they're like, you know, otherworldly almost. And like some of them have
Yeah.
powers. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
and
they
Yeah.
I
were
thought
wild looking.
in the theater, I thought it looked really cool, but when I watched those scenes on my TV, I don't know, it didn't feel as it felt kind of like cheesy, like they put like a TikTok filter over it. But I remember watching it in the theater and being like, "Whoa, this is so awesome." But Austin Butler, what's his character name?
Fade
His
Oh,
Routha.
nephew, Fade
yeah.
Rafa. He he's sort of like another question mark to me because he's supposed to be again this great warrior, but the people he's battling are literally like on drugs, like stumbling and bumbling all around the town. And it's sort of like, is he like, are he and Paul being propped up to be so much more than they are? Like, are they just like, here's a young white man that we are going to be obsessed with? Like, fight, fight, fight to the death, but we're like going to give you invalids, basically. Um, and I don't know. I wish he didn't die almost because I wanted his
I
character to
know.
move on. I wanted to know more about like and maybe there isn't much to know. Maybe when it comes to Harkonnens, they're supposed to be very black and white. Like there's not a lot of growth or story arc that's supposed to come along with them. But I
Yeah,
was
they're just
sort of
kind of
bummed.
like primal, feral
Yeah,
people.
primal, feral people. But when he's stabbed, I'm like, man, I could have used a little more of him on my screen. Not just because he's handsome, but because his storyline I think would be interesting. Again, so maybe when they do these series, they touch into the past and the future and bring him back. I'm not sure.
Well, you identify, yeah, a lot of what makes these films so great, and I'm sure it is probably reflected in the novel as well. But there's just so much layering and um, ambiguity to every detail. Like someone like this Fade Ralph, the character, it's evoked in the fact, his introduction is this black and white sequence. These are just brutal. As Gurney says in the first film, they're brutal. And you really get the sense, yeah, these Harkonnens they're basically a race who are just so corrupted, and you know they're ridden with like chemicals and alterations made to their physiology, their biology. They're like living cyborgs almost, these
As Florence Pugh
genetically
said,
engineered. Yeah.
he goes, he's a psychopath. And it's like,
Yeah.
Psychopath.
yes.
Yeah. But yet there's still something compelling about that. There is still like a residual humanity to this Fade Ralph character that does come through, which is surprising. Like he has a degree of charm, like the moment when um Paul salutes him at the start of the fight, uh, Fade Routha returns the salute, and it's kind of sweet, almost like
Yes, he's like a little kid. I jotted that down in my notes. I was like, it's not even like he was poking fun at Paul when they come to this battle. I think
Mhm.
Paul says something along the lines of like, "May our knife shatter and break" or something. And he sort of gives
Mhm.
like an idiot, like a little idiotic smile and goes, "Yeah, like same dude."
I dig
You know?
the style. Yeah. Well, and then of course the fighting drugged opponents. I mean, he's clearly capable of holding his own. You see that demonstrated clearly in the fight against Paul. He almost bests Paul, but in this the arena sequence, they don't want to risk Fade Routh his life, but um, you know, the Baron Vladimir decides to mix things up a little bit on Fade's birthday, and one of them is not drugged, and one of the three opponents, and so there is a little bit of tension, and so you really have to or you get a sense that this isn't just an incompetent sheltered puppy. This character,
Mhm.
he
He's
actually,
been trained.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. But then he also isn't super vindictive either towards his uncle for putting his life at risk either. He was like, I appreciated the challenge. So yeah, there's some humanity there. I like the sort of realistic, the way that these characters in these situations they roll with the punches in very subtle ways.
Well,
yeah,
especially with them like being the heirs to like thrones and empires and stuff. So it's like I feel like they kind of like they are catered to because they are the heirs of these empires, but they also have to show like, hey, don't try to overthrow us. Don't mess with us. We will kill you. And I think that's why they like usually gave him drugged people to fight because it is like, oh, let me show you my prowess. I will mess you up, but we don't want him to actually die. And so that's why they did it. And then it was kind of like, I guess, kind of just to like prove himself too, because he was like, at that point, Dave Bautista's character, I can't remember what his name is, was not
Ravant.
doing a great job. Yeah, he wasn't doing a great job. And so the uncle was like, maybe if this one can prove himself, I'll just give it to him because he's more ruthless and he's going to get stuff done. And so I do think it's like, they are like, I guess, I want to say species, but they are technically humans. They were just very like carnal and it very much reminded me of like the gladiator era, where it was like, ah,
mhm.
yes, entertain us by bloodshed.
Oh, 1,000,000%. When everyone's kind of sitting around and chanting like they're at a Taylor Swift concert, it's like people are
Kill him,
dying down
kill
there.
him.
Yeah, what a
It was
weird
wild.
society. I mean, it made me think of like North Korea a little bit because no way in this society do they allow anyone who's like the remotest kind of dissenter against the regime. Everyone, I'm sure, is sort of engineered in this society to just be in lockstep with the Harkonnens. Even the language is called Harkonnen. Everything
Huh.
is tailored after this ruling despotic house,
And
this king.
something that I can't seem to pinpoint is like, why did the emperor, like the ultimate emperor of the entire universe,
Hmm.
why does he let the Harkonnens be the way they are? I mean, he let them take over that planet for so long and harness the spice. They must not be, the Harkonnens must not be a threat to him. Is it because maybe they are supposed to be like a little bit stupid in comparison to the emperor and the princess? Because I mean, he does let them be very, very strong. And I think, unfortunately, because the movie couldn't be 5 hours long, we don't really get to see the balance between all these houses. So maybe other houses are just as strong that kind of balance them out. But I feel like the Harkonnens are like this powerhouse, but the emperor isn't like even phased by them. He uses them just as
Well,
an extension of his power, it seems like.
well, and I think what it is because they are like, big, dumb, strong, crazy. He kind of like, I mean, they kind of have to keep them like have some kind of reins on them because, I guess empire could easily come over to them because I guess they're like the families. but they could come over to them and try to overtake the Empire as well. But I guess kind of like in agreement because, the Bene Gesserit were like, well, Jessica did whatever she wanted and had a boy. They were like, his dad, Leto, and him, they were like, ooh, they have too much power. And so the Emperor was like feeling threatened because people liked them and they were doing well. And they, tended to go against what the Bene Gesserit said they were supposed to do. And so he was like, okay, I'll make a deal, which was implanted in his head by the Bene Gesserit. The Emperor was like, I'll make a deal with the Harkonnen to basically get rid of them so I don't have to worry about losing my empire or like losing my followers to the Atreides.
Feyd-Rautha was known to be controllable by the Bene Gesserits, and Lady Margot was the character
That
played by
makes them
Leia
like a
Seydoux.
safe. Oh, sorry, Philip.
Well,
Yeah.
she
So that like makes
gets
them a safe option because they're easily controlled. Okay, I see.
Yeah, and like whatever, Paul wasn't. Like, I mean, they knew that he could handle like the power and stuff, but they could not easily control him and the other guys in the Atreides. And so they were like, maybe we should get them out of here.
The Empire says something as much about Leto, Paul's father, how he was a ruler, but a ruler from the heart. That's just like not a good way to rule. And I think probably the fear is that Paul would be like that as well. Although I do think Paul slowly is losing his humanity throughout the sequel. I mean, he does start to fall into this. I mean, yeah, going back to Paul, sorry, I'm gonna like jump back earlier. I love him so much at the beginning of the movie, like when he's learning how to ride the sandworm and he's trying to learn the ways of the Fremen. And I mean, it's very much like John Smith trying to figure out what Pocahontas loves about the forest, And then he has that big turn, that big change, even though he says before and after the change, he tells Shawnee, I'm going to love you with every breath that I have, and plot twist, he ends up not with Shawnee, but
Bro, I was so mad
I
in the
know.
movie theater. He did that. And I was like, after he was like, why are you mad? And I was like, because screw Paul. Like, how rude. And he was like, well, no, he still loves her. They can be together. And I was like, who wants to be the side piece? Nobody. I don't want to be the side piece to this witch lady who's an empress. No, thank you. I was so gorgeous. Mad. I know. How dare you? It was like, you go be with Zendaya in the freaking sand, you jerk.
And I feel like they did a really good job keeping the love story alive, even though this was such a big action movie. I saw online some people were like, oh, Paul and Shawnee, like they don't have chemistry. But I thought it was really good. I mean, she's not going to be this like lovey-dovey, like, oh, honey, baby.
She's
like,
not a princess. Yeah.
They repress their emotions.
Yeah, and it's a modern, like not modern. Well, I guess what is it? The year 10,000.
It's super modern.
Super duper modern.
Way, way far away.
And like even though she doesn't believe in him as the Messiah, she like believes in him as a person, and she does a lot to make sure he gets to where he needs to go. Especially when he's sent off into the desert, sort of to prove his worth as one of the Fremen. And I don't know. Yeah, I was the same as you, Bridget, when he said, "I'll take the princess as my wife." I was like, oh man, like that would be, it'd be like if someone was like texting you like hearts, I love you, I love you, I love you, and then it's like, oh, they're in a Facebook relationship with someone else. You're like, oh.
I mean, I assume that she legit like lost her virginity to him.
I think so.
In one of the earlier scenes, and I was like,
yeah,
how dare you? Oh, I was mad. I was very perturbed. And I mean, I get it though. It's like obviously she has feelings for him, and she is going like along with this stuff kind of because she does also want to protect her people. But it's like, and that's kind of like she was annoyed with him when he was like, oh, we have to go to the south because they're up in here blowing up everything and killing people. And it's too many of them. If we go down, we have more people, and we can get the nukes or whatever they have down there, or atomics. That's what they call them. And so like she knows, and I think that's another reason why they kept the love story alive, because she is impertinent. Their connection is impertinent for the story to progress. So if it was just like, oh, they kind of fell off and there's not a lot of connection, her kind of saving him as the prophecy foretells with her tears after he drinks the stuff, it wouldn't flow as well if there wasn't some kind of connection there, because she has to be distraught that he might be dead. but then also distraught that she has to go along with this when she knew that he didn't want to. So yeah,
Right.
I don't know. It's very much one of those, it's like, the prophecy is foretold and he can see all this stuff, but he's like very much like, I don't want to do it, but then ends
Yeah,
up doing
he's
it
having
anyway.
throughout, I mean, the book and the movie, Paul is like having all of these terrors and horrors and nightmares, basically
Like
telling
watching
him,
everyone
don't go
die.
south. And you do sort of get, in broad strokes that he is willing to lose his humanity to claim this destiny that his mom is promising him. But like you said, he's also sort of worried about surviving these attacks. Like the people aren't going to go unless Paul goes. So whatever, he does end up in the South. And one difference that I noticed from the book is when he goes into that coma. So once he's South and he drinks that water of life, which pause, one of the best scenes is when he's walking through that mob of people and it's like an aerial shot. You guys have to remember what I'm talking about. And he's walking in and everyone's sort of breaking the tide for him to go through. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I
Like
love that
after
part.
he wakes up and stuff and he's like
Yeah.
yelling.
Yes.
Yeah, because
But
it's like you're only supposed to be able to talk if you're like a leader. And if you're not a leader, then you have to like fight the leader. But he's like, look, I have the power. Kiss my ass.
silence.
Basically. Yeah.
Countess, yeah.
Honestly though, I'm like, I keep looking at Timothy Chalamet as like I've always looked at him and like, oh, he's so cute, so little, so baby, oh, so cute. But during that scene, I was like, okay,
Well,
okay, okay,
I
Paul. But he is almost 30. Don't let it fool you. He is almost 30.
Well, no, I think the same thing because in a lot of movies, he's a sensitive character. He's sort of this teen heartthrob or like this kid who's struggling with sexuality or drugs or lost love, whatever. And I was like, how do they make that switch? And I was listening today, someone talking about, the power of filmography or cinematography. And like you said, he's this slight, small guy. But after he drinks the water of life, not only does he kind of have a deeper voice, but they film him from a lower angle. So he looks bigger. You're like looking up at him versus earlier in the film when you're kind of looking at him straight on. And that also helps him gain that power that like I'm a badass or whatever, where he comes into his power, which again, it's like Disney does stuff like that too, where you look at the castle and you're like, the castle's so huge but really it's like the bricks getting smaller the higher up it goes. It's sort of that optical illusion there.
Yeah, it's all what is it? Sleight of hand. It's not a sleight of hand, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Forced
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Well, and
And then
he is actually kind of tall. He's 5'10", which is tall to me. I don't know about you guys.
he's
So
tall.
that's tall to me. But I do think that he also worked out more for this one. Like I think he had more muscles. He had more muscles in this one.
You're under all that armor. I feel like in the first movie, he's not that he's ever naked, but he's like in his bedroom, like under a sheet. And now he's like under armor as well. So I guess
Yeah, they
it's his
probably pad
body
him
change.
too. They're like,
Yeah.
hey, you need to be buff now because you are a buff messiah. Okay. But yeah, like I looked it up because I was like, I don't know why in my head, because I have watched Little Women, which had Timothy Chalamet and Florence Pugh, and for some reason
Oh,
in my
good.
brain, and I'm like, maybe it's just because Florence Pugh seems more mature. I don't know. I thought she was older than him. He's older than her. And I was like, huh? I was like, I'm so confused. And then I realized he was almost 30. I think he'll actually be 29 this year. And I was like, oh, he's not as young as I thought he was. Like I look at him like I look at Tom Holland. I was like, oh, cute babies.
Those young boys having so much fun in their movies.
I can't be attracted to you because yes. Yeah, you young
Philip and
baby
I-
actor man.
He's younger than Saoirse Ronan, but yeah, she's
Well,
Philip
yeah,
and
I think Saoirse Ronan's closer to our age.
Philip
No, sorry, you're good.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Being from like the north from Minnesota, like fun fact, like he's currently filming to be Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Which is going to be kind of again, probably back to that sensitive role. But one thing I was going to note was, when he drinks the water of life and he kind of quote unquote dies, but his vital signs are still there. In the book, he is in like, don't quote me on this, but he's in like a 3-year-long coma. Like this isn't just like, oh, I fainted, I drank this water. And so like Zendaya or Shawnee,
Where's Shawnee been this whole time then?
well, I mean, she is kind of torn. She is not sure that crying on this guy's face with her Desert Spring tears is the right move. And I think the voice has to sort of convince her that, like, girl, you got to do your part. This is destiny. Like, get those tears flowing. But in the book, it's a little bit more of a like push and pull where she could have, I mean, she could have ended the prophecy right there by like dabbing with a little tissue and being like, sorry, Paul, you know? And that is more of a thing. But again, certain things you probably just have to speed up. But while he's in that coma, that's when he's able to sort of talk to his unborn sister and again find out about his ancestry. And my thought about the sister, the fetus, is Jessica pregnant just for like 19 years?
Well, it seems like it takes longer than 9 months for the events of this
Yeah.
movie to unfold, but I guess not. I mean, there's no indication that there's some kind of mystical um, quality to a
But as
prolonged
someone who
gestation.
was pregnant, like she's traveling from desert to desert, like there, I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
time, the gestational period just has to be different on this planet because the baby, the fetus is literally still a fetus at the end of the movie, but with
Mm.
blue eyes, who is going to ultimately be played by another famous actress who makes a really short cameo in
Anya
this,
Taylor-Joy.
and she's
Yeah,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
and she's perfect for anything spacey. I'm like, you have like she has the look,
Those
like
eyes.
pretty space girl all the
But
time. I always
she's in the novel, and I think in the previous adaptation, the David Lynch film, she is born. Like she doesn't r remain unborn throughout the entire story, correct? The first novel. Am
Oh man.
I wrong?
I don't remember honestly if she's born or not. I'm just
Well,
thinking of the movie from today.
the
yeah,
3 year coma would imply that she
she'd
she
be
would be
born.
born.
I
Yeah,
gotta look when we're done with this. I'm gonna look it up and text it to you guys because I'm not totally sure.
Well, I
yeah.
do know she will not be a baby in the third one. Rumor has it. That is what I've heard. She
Because
will
the
she will be a
actress,
person in the third one.
But
But I
that's
don't know
some
if they're
time.
gonna do it like
Mm,
from the future going back because he has that like the dream or whatever vision of her and she's like
yeah.
I love you in the sands and whatever blah blah blah. So she's gonna be in the third one like as a person. So I don't know if there'll be a time jump from the beginning in the middle at the beginning and then goes back. Who knows?
Yeah, she was in the 1984 film played by Alicia Witt, and yeah, I mean, it's surprising she isn't born in this film, but yeah, I don't know if there's something magical involved in
or maybe
that, or
maybe Jessica being as powerful as she is, maybe she can slow the time. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah, like it's not
possible.
ideal to have you. You have to stay in.
right. She Jessica again, who's been seeding this prophecy for forever. Um, I looked up what her tattoos mean because after she drinks that water, she starts having those markings on her face and she really changes wardrobe. She wears that traditional like headpiece and stuff. And apparently it says, I must not fear. So, and I guess
Yeah.
that's what she's mumbling throughout the movies as well. I must not fear. I must not fear. But if you guys were curious,
Yeah.
facial tattoos, that's the surprise.
Yeah. It's like the Ben Gesserit litany against fear. That's why she
Oh,
has it all over her face.
oh,
Um, yeah. That well, and I think she also kind of like starts to dress and stuff like them too, and like kind of take over that role because she wants them to believe that he is the Messiah. So she needs them to trust her and think that she's like, one of them so that because I mean, obviously, I mean, look at Jessica. Like Jessica thinks that she's like better than them. She's like,
mhm.
I just need you guys to get this prophecy done. Um, and I think that's also something that I read with Shawnee is that because in the movie they have to make it quicker because it's a movie and it was already 3 hours long. Um, that Shawnee basically kind of gets pressured by the voice that
Yeah.
Jessica uses. She uses the power to basically kind of force her to do it. So it's not
Mhm.
like she actually has an option in the movie part of it. Granted, I haven't read the book.
It's the same in the
And so
book.
yeah,
She had been
she
hemming and
doesn't really have
hawing.
like the option.
Yeah, and ultimately like the voice is what compels her to like go ahead and do it. But she had her reservations because Shawnee like truly does put her people first. Uh, yeah, it's kind of sad because you see this and I mean, we don't need to talk too much about it, but a lot of people talk about how this kind of parallels that white savior complex, which is kind of like, if you don't know, whoever's listening, it's like a white person who comes to like rescue the non-white people or the minority, but
The
essentially like,
indigenous people.
yes, but people of color that are like in an underdeveloped nation or something like that, but they don't really have agency already. So you're saving people, whatever. And I mean,
Yeah.
that is who Paul is in this like movie. And it's kind of like a struggle sometimes because like in the book and in the movie, you're sort of like cheering for Paul. You're like, yes, like chase your destiny, like chase your journey. But it is kind of sad that it does seem like that it's going to lead to the expense of the Fremen people. What I really liked is at the very end how it ends, if we can skip there and we can skip back again, but like how Paul's like, we're gonna start a holy war. And instead of like ending on that note of like, yeah, holy war, they like kind of pan back to Shawnee, who's like about to go back out into that desert, like somebody who's actually living the reality of the Fremen versus like this rich white boy who's like, yeah, let's fight to the death. Not to oversimplify it or anything, but the story does sort of tie into, in our world, we have these limited resources, aka like the spice, and how it just affects the poor people versus the rich people, and how it really tears us apart. And we all look for like a leader, but like how the leader has been so manipulated. It's like, who do you trust? So I like at the ending because it's like, yay, Paul. But then you're like, wait, like, is this the right path or should he have not? But I don't think he really had a choice ultimately. I do think it was predestined for him, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's like
I love.
how much control do you have over your future,
Mhm.
especially when you have so much power working behind you. But that's like, well, and I know like you said the white savior thing, but honestly, like based on everything that we know so far, granted, I don't know how it ends, um, is that honestly, I feel like he's kind of like anti-white savior because like he wants to help them, but once he has the power, like really it's all about control and power. Like he wants to beat the empire. He wants to be the emperor. And so really they're just a means to an end. It's kind of like, I mean, I guess you could parallel it to like when people came over to America. They were like, "Hey, I want these resources. I want this land. All of you indigenous people either get with it or get out, and you'll probably die if you don't." And so it's like, is he a savior? Is he?
That's
Because
that's
like
that's the thing is like he isn't like it's a
he's
complex.
very much like not.
Right, exactly. It's exactly right. They come here and they say like, "Hey, bud, like teach me how to plant corn." Wait a minute, that field is mine. And
Yeah, I like
it's
these worms you got. Sure would
yeah,
be a shame if I learned how to ride
yeah, exactly.
it.
Exactly. And can we say like as far as sandworms go, these were quite good. They were very compelling. Like I feel like the worms could have been a make or break thing. They could have come across as so cheesy, but I thought they were very scary and I would definitely not want to bump into one. But yeah, they teach them the ways. It's just, I mean, like I said, Pocahontas, the movie Avatar in Pandora, it's just like the tale as old as time is like this person comes in to quote unquote save everyone. And then it's like, but for what? From what? From yourself. So I hope
Yeah.
that the third, takes us into that, which I'm sure it will, like into his evil side. I don't know if you guys know what happens to Paul as the story continues
I
in
assume
season
he dies.
I
I don't know. My assumption
let's
is he
just leave
dies.
it for next time. Yeah.
That's my
But
theory. Don't confirm or deny, but
I
that's my
mean,
theory. Well, because it's the Messiah. They gotta go. That's
well,
how you make
it's
a martyr out of
Can
them.
I ruin it for you
That's my
guys?
assumption.
no,
No,
don't.
you
But
can't
No.
tell us.
you guys,
I'm
if you
just telling you
want,
my theory.
No, no, we're only discussing Dune 2 for
oh
today.
man,
No,
it's like
only
gonna
do
be
two, nothing
6
else.
years from now
Or
before we get to the
Dune
next one. Okay.
Part
Well, if
1.
you change your mind, like let me know because like I will tell you that like okay, I won't say anything.
No,
Nothing.
I mean
She'll tell
it's
us nothing.
it's totally Frank Herbert was conflicted about people celebrating the character of Paul from the first book specifically, and so he expanded the um whole cautionary elements of the you know rise of a despotic ruler and the Messiah complex in the later novels, but this one is sort of just more of a heroic tale of the underdog rising to the occasion. And I mean he is furthering the cause of the Fremen. The Fremen were in a civil war, or in a, I guess not even a civil, because the
It's like a war for
Harkonnens,
survival, essentially.
yeah, they were,
Well, it's like the War of the Roses. It's not even that they were like, it was like, oh, you have to survive. They were just like, I want power and I want the spice. And
they
whoever
were
has the spice has the
resisting,
power.
yeah, a
Yeah, they were
revolutionary
resisting
war
that
against
because they wanted to
Harkins.
keep their land. You know what I mean? Like they had been there, they had learned to survive with literally no water at all. And can we just note how crazy it is that they take the water from those who have passed away and make these underwater, I guess,
Aqueducts.
cemeteries? Yeah, aqueduct cemetery type thing.
Hmm.
And he's like, we would rather all die of thirst before even having a drop of that water. If I pass away, like, y'all can just have my water. Like, I promise you, like, I'm good. It's like a sweet sentiment, but y'all are on the brink of death each and every day, no water to be had. I get it for the movie, I get it for the story, but realistically, I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah, the
Take a drink of
logistics.
the water.
Yeah, it's this the way the you know Arrakis ecology works isn't very fleshed out. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The logistics of the sieges and how they're able to sustain these populations of thousands of people. But I guess if it's all underground, then I guess there could be any number of uh, ways that strategies, resources that can be employed to sustain people. But like you kind of need a lot of light too. So I don't know. Yeah, it's bizarre how there are millions of people living on this planet that is just so barren. And not even necessarily though permanently barren though, because that Dr. Kynes talks about the reclamation projects that were being um, considered in the first film,
Mhm.
until doing so, turning Arrakis into a fertile planet, one which I think it had been more so in previous eras, that would compromise the spice production, and so keeping it all a desert was just more beneficial economically. And so now, yeah, I guess these Fremen have adapted though, to this underground lifestyle, to the point they can survive in fairly large numbers. But you know, wait, I thought I remember rain. Am I thinking of the 1984 film?
I don't think it
Was it?
rained because I think he was like telling her about it. She was like, "Oh, water falls from the sky?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah."
Mhm.
And he's like telling her about the ocean. I didn't think it rained there.
And I think the scene where he's talking to his yet to be born sister, are they not standing by water
Well, it in the dream,
in
there's
the dream?
water. So I'm
Okay.
like, and it's in the future. So I was like, huh, does he do something that makes water come? Or maybe it's like an area that they can't get to or something because of however
In,
how the planet
okay.
is.
In David Lynch's Dune, there's a 3 hour cut as well. One of the scene that bothers me, Paul makes it rain on Arrakis. So yeah, I'm thinking of the old Dune adaptation, and that's also very like portentous of prophecy fulfillment, and and that kind of just mythological, mystical, um, you
Like
know,
parting the Red Sea or something,
yeah,
having a control over nature.
miraculous thing that happens.
Yeah, it says
And there's
yeah, the
similar things, yeah.
1984 one had rain in it,
Huh.
I guess. I didn't actually watch it, so I've only seen people talk about it. I've never watched it, but I've seen clips of it and I was like, wow, that's dated. That's
That
old.
did not stand the test of time.
The omens that accompany these sorts of prophetic events, and the mechanics of destiny, there's just so much momentum behind what the Bene Gesserits have placed in motion. And, it's kind of fun that it isn't, totally predetermined as to what the outcome will be. but there are enough pieces in place that they have multiple prospects for at least some version of this similar outcome. The coming of and is there a term that the Bene Gesserits used to refer to the Messiah, the Mahdi, the
There,
Lisan
yeah, there's
al-Gaib?
a word for it, but I couldn't remember how to say it. So I was like,
So
man, the Messiah. That
they're
works.
Fremen terms, but they basically want to introduce a leader who transcends or connects fully connects the past, the present, and uh, are we to uh, are they intending for this Messiah character to be female, the Bene Gesserits
No.
ultimately?
I think they thought it would be Jessica's grandson. So not Paul,
Yeah.
that she would have a daughter and that daughter would have a son because in the book they're like Paul's brain isn't like ready for it, like not enough time has gone through the DNA or whatever. They didn't think that Paul, it was too soon that Paul would.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like farther out. And he also
Yeah.
wasn't easy to control. So it was like he can't
Yeah.
they don't want him. So
Well,
yeah, I think it was supposed to be later on. And that's
yeah.
why they, do the weird breeding thing with the Bene Gesserits and they,
Yeah.
mind control them. Because that's why like the Lady Margot, she like comes back, she's like, ah, it's a girl. And I was like, dang girl, that was fast. Like quick. So yeah, like they do that intentionally, and I think it's to like down the line have it. But yeah, they weren't ready. But Jessica was like, I do what I want.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have that Messiah baby.
I like to think that she like loved Leto, and I think it's just because I love that actor and I love Leto that I wish that she truly like loved him, and that's why she had a son was for him to carry on his name, which is also very stupid that you have to have a son to carry on your name, but whatever. Also, flashback to Leto. What I also really like is Gurney. I feel like he's supposed to be like a splash from the past, being like, oh, by the way, your dad has this arsenal of big atomics, like not a huge deal, but we can just use those to wipe out, I guess, what they were just trying to damage the spice fields with the atomics.
Well, yeah, they're basically threatening it because they need it to travel. So they can't travel to other places, like to other planets and stuff, if they don't have the spice. So he's like,
Mhm.
I'll nuke this whole place. I don't care. Like as long as you don't have it, I'll pull it up. And so he kind of uses it as like a scare tactic
Right. And that's when
initially.
he's there. That's kind of towards the end when he's about to do that final fight. And he's sort of telling the Emperor, like, sure, you can call in all of these houses to help you, but they're going to need to hear my side. Also, just in case they don't hear my side, I'm just going to blow everything up. You're right. You're right. That is kind of more how it went. And then I really thought the fight between the two young guys, Austin and what is it? Philip, you know his name? Fred.
Paul.
Fade,
Paul,
Oh,
well,
the
Fade
Nephilim.
Routha.
Fred Ralph and Paul.
Yeah. What I really liked is that it was like two guys having just a knife fight in New York City. Like there was no magic spells, there's no like whipping and flipping. It's just two guys with two knives. Very simple. And then you pan the room and it's like all the stars of Hollywood watching.
Yeah.
All of these actors and but no special powers. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, the riding of the sandworms seems supernatural almost because it strains credulity why a tiny speck of a human in comparison to this giant worm, is capable of wrangling, these worms and making them travel purely along, skimming the surface when, otherwise these things are mostly seen, traveling a subterranean. And so, like, clearly there's something about, how they're mounted by these riders that prevents them from submerging beneath the sand. I guess, you see how the little cracks in their segments have little like air holes in them and stuff. So I don't know. There maybe there's some kind of mystical connection with the spice between the rider and the worm that allows that whole um the domestication process to occur. But yeah, it's bizarre that this worm riding concept that actually works. But the fact that it does means that, the Fremen have a way to get around the planet quickly. So very, very fortunate that it does. But yeah, it's like, these worms are very convenient source of um, transportation for the Fremen. But the moment you dismount one of them, they turn into these ravenous killing monsters.
Yeah, so you better get out of there. Well, I think it's wild that they moved so many people. They're like, ah,
Yeah.
yeah, throw the mother in a box, put her on the worm, let's get to the south. And
Yes.
I know part of me, how much anxiety would that be to just hold on to a worm and hope you don't die?
Yeah, these they're they're so dangerous, and yet they're so, desperately depended upon. Um, yeah, I don't know. It just underlines the brutality of Arrakis, um, and the hardiness of the Fremen. And yeah, they deal with so much adversity and are kind of, beaten down as a civilization that, they depend on hope that's seeded by the Bene Gesserit, and they do gain a lot of their ultimate will to survive from these kind of superstitions. Uh,
Well, that's
so,
like one of the lines I liked from the Bene Gesserit. And they were like, oh yeah, like which side are you on? And she was like, oh, the Bene Gesserit doesn't take sides. And I was like, they said whoever wins, which is gonna be us, I'm
yeah,
on
it's
that
it's
side.
it's not about good and evil. Like ultimately, at this cosmic scale, it's about balance and,
It's like
notions
a
of
chess
like,
game.
yeah, it's good and evil are kind of more of a construct than a reflection of, the actual um, balance of forces that produce, the status quo.
Okay, so I looked it up because I couldn't remember. The name that they call the Messiah character is Kwisatz Haderach.
Oh
That's the
yes,
Bene
yes,
Gesserit name, and then it's Muad'Dib to the Fremen. So, and
yeah.
yeah, because I remember they were like, oh yeah, Muad'Dib. Honestly, Muad'Dib's much easier to say. They should just stick with that one. Uh,
Well,
um,
yeah, Muad'Dib. I I know that in this movie is referred to just as, or is translated to the sand mouse.
yeah.
Um, so um, that they do have other Fremen terms as well that they use, I think, for the Kwisatz Haderach. But yeah, the fact that, Paul refers to himself as the mouse, it's kind of a, cheeky indicator of his humility as a Messiah. The Messiah character wouldn't admit that he's the Messiah. So
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
They were
but
like, oh,
Stilgar loves it.
you,
Stilgar's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
that's exactly what the Messiah would
Mhm.
say.
Oh
Like,
yeah, they're so the desert mouse. It
I
can live
need one of these.
anywhere. That's
Mhm.
exactly what the Messiah would pick.
He's
And that's
the
what I mean.
ultimate
There's
hype man. I love it.
what's very much like there really is like the religious zealots of it, and then there's the people from like the north part of the planet, or not the planet, I guess the place. Um, like then that's where Zendaya's from. Shawnee is from, and she's like, yeah,
Yeah,
no, those are just crazy religious people. He's just a guy, and they're like,
yeah.
but he could be the Messiah.
Siege Tabor is where uh Chani and um
Her friend
I can
that gets
remember,
stabbed.
well, Stilgar, uh
Yeah.
and did is it, well, when is it ever explicitly stated? Because they're father and daughter, obviously, right?
Oh, I don't know. I
Uh
don't know. I think he's just
okay.
the leader. I don't know that they're necessarily related.
Um I've always been under that impression. Is in the novel, Johnny is the daughter of Dr. Liet Kynes and the niece of Stilgar. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, the wiki says that he's like her godparents, and they
Okay.
performed the water of conception ritual for her. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so he's basically like an uncle, is like what the internet says. He's like an uncle to her.
And
Interesting.
Because
who knows
I,
within those tribes, like if
How do their family
yeah,
structures?
like if they're
yeah,
all family in a way. I
like
don't
it takes a
know.
village, like like
Very
they
much
actually use
so.
that. They're like, oh,
Well,
it takes a village. Every kid is everyone's kid, basically.
my foster sister, Crystal, she is Native American and she calls so many people like auntie and uncle that are not biologically related to her. And that's just very common, I think. For so, I'm not saying that this is what it is, but they are supposed to be these indigenous people. So maybe, or maybe he's very much the uncle. I don't know.
Hmm.
Well, and I think because he was apparently it says he was a godfather. So I'm like, I mean, it could be like, like my best friend and like Godfrey's best friends. The kids will be like, we're like, oh, that's Uncle Dallin. Oh, that's Auntie Alex. And so they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like they're not really. They know they're not related to them, but they are around them almost as much as like family. So
Well, yeah, she doesn't go along with the gambit in the end of trying to consolidate power through um, joining the house or um, the imperial throne to Paul. She's it's very possible she would have been like, well, yeah, that's what you got to do to to end this war. You gotta try to you know win the hand of the princess.
well,
But
maybe he
yeah,
would have told
Johnny.
her. He could have like given her a heads up, like, all right, I have to do this because we
Yeah,
have to do this to get power. But like, no, he was like, hey, I'll
yeah,
love you as long as I'm alive, as long as I'm breathing. And the next day he's like, huh, I'm gonna marry the princess. Like, dang,
yeah.
give a girl a heads up. Like
Well,
you sitting there doing pillow talk.
I always thought of her kind of as a princess. So like, she, you know, isn't a person of royalty or necessarily status, it turns out. And of course,
I
the
think the
Fremen are all supposed to
Fremen,
be equal anyways, but
and the Fremen, I think in terms of this universe or this place, like I don't think I think they're supposed to be very like low on the totem pole. I don't know if that is a politically
Well,
correct phrase, but
yeah,
I don't think
they
they
let's
have
just.
status in this universe.
Mhm.
they have a
Um,
bargaining chip with the spice, ultimately, if they were able to get control of Arrakis. And that's what Duke Leto was ultimately, trying to accomplish when he moved to Arrakis, because he knew he would be under attack from the Harkonnens, but if he could cultivate the desert power, their fighting forces, could be employed to defend ultimately, and so they, Duke Leto as a noble ruler, he would have lent authority to the Fremen, allowed them to reclaim their position of autonomy in Arrakis, uh, taking a step back from where the Harkonnens had been, where the Harkonnens wanted to wipe out. They were basically genocidal towards the Fremen.
Yeah, they're
Um,
like, we need this spice and we need you out of our
yeah.
hair. I guess they didn't have
Yeah, I don't
anything,
know.
but
Is there a solution to the spice though? If that terraforming effort, there must be other ways of getting spice and allowing the navigators to attain their sort of hallucinogenic state that enables the interstellar travel, um, via starship. It's a weird thing where the spice is capable of opening up portals in space for ships to pass through, because of the telekinetic properties that it imparts upon its heaviest of users, these navigators who have been, I don't know, generationally perhaps exposed to spice. and so they're no longer like human. Do you have you seen the images of the guild navigators from the David Lynch film and how they're
I
like,
haven't.
yeah, it's pretty rad. But just yeah, if you look up guild navigator uh
Yeah.
from Dune 1984, and it's this alien looking thing, but it's just a human that's been exposed to spice and
Oh,
evolved by it. Um,
oh, they're weird looking.
are you
Yikes.
looking at it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's freaky.
Well, I
But
mean, I guess
yeah,
it would make sense if you're like exposed to something that can quite possibly, change your chemical makeup, that eventually you'd evolve into something weird. You'd evolve
Oh, you
to a
guys are
point to
killing
look
me
like
that I
that.
can't tell you what happens
You can't tell
next.
us anything, Jody.
but
Hush.
yeah, yeah. I mean, are there other ways of accomplishing what these guild navigators do that don't involve Arrakis? There must be some way in which whoever discovered Arrakis, was able to get there, travel, interstellar travel that you know
Oh, that's true. Like, how would
didn't
they get there to
involve
begin with
spice.
if they didn't have the spice?
Well, I imagine
So
it
I
was
don't know.
probably like they had other ways, like,
Yeah,
like years before, but eventually you find
Mhm.
something that works and then people just like depend on it instead
It's
of looking, they're like, oh, we'll just, completely deplete this resource and then we'll worry about it later, I guess. Kind of like they do now.
Oh, I was gonna say
Kind of
that's
like
like a
they do
very
now.
familiar theme. Like,
Yeah, so I think that's kind of part of the why they like fight the Fremen fight back so hard because they're like, well, one, you're coming here and you're killing us to do it. But two, it's like we don't want you to take all of the resources on like where we live. Use the
mhm.
resources where you live. Like find another way, or like just don't travel interstellarly anymore. And I think that's kind of what it is. That's why he's like, hey, I'll use these atomics. And I watched like a thing that did kind of like a recap, and they were like, because this is like so far in the future, they were like, oh, the atomics. Apparently, there was like a thing where everyone was supposed to get rid of their bombs, and the Atreides was like, yeah, I got rid of it, and they like hid them somewhere. And that's why it's kind of like a tie back. That's why they're called the atomics, because they're like an atomic bomb from like probably not our time, but like in the future, but before the happenings of the movie. And I was like, huh. And Atreides was like, I know y'all are a bunch of backstabbers, so I'm gonna protect mine over here. But I think that's why he was like, yeah, he was like, I'll just blow up the planet or I'll blow up the resource, and then we have nothing to fight over because you're not gonna be able to get here.
yeah. I mean, I'm just
I
skeptical of Arrakis being the sole source of this resource, but maybe. And
and I mean, it might
uh,
be the closest.
it does enable the passage through time and space. So, maybe some melange ended up in some distant region of the galaxy because, I'm sure maybe these worms or other creatures native to Arrakis, they, would end up in strange places, remote places because they accidentally opened up portals to travel into, you know, remote regions of the galaxy. And then that,
Like in
that
Beetlejuice.
you
Beetlejuice
get,
is part of the Dune universe.
yeah, you get
Um,
these deposits of spice showing up in random places.
well, and I do wonder, like, is it like they take the spice and then do something special with it to make it like the fuel that they need? Because you do make a point. It's not like people are like teleporting on the planet.
Hmm.
No,
So,
but it just it's like the Force. It allows you
yeah,
to do all kinds of weird stuff.
but only some people can do the weird things.
It requires
Not
massive
everyone can do it.
amounts. Yeah, you have to have like massive, doses of it to be a navigator, and it involves, yeah, all kinds of weird technology. But you hear people talk about their psychedelic experiences in our world and how they experience traveling to distant planets and living amongst alien civilizations, uh, living in non-Euclidean universes amongst beings that can't be defined in typical um, anthropomorphic terms, just very non yeah, what's the word? Non-humanoid type creatures and things like that.
They be doing the mushrooms, I guess.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
doing
say,
doing
like,
They're doing some mushrooms, doing some astral projecting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what's going on here, but they're able to kind of ground it in reality.
Well, that's like so one thing with Princess, what was her name? Elon? Is that her name? Or Elon?
The
yeah,
Florence
Erling.
Pugh's
Florence
character.
Pugh, yeah.
So I like the vibe that I get. So I know that no one gets like they don't get married to their like concubines that are from the Bene Gesserit. But like so you see in the movie that she's basically like a Bene Gesserit as well, but she is like the emperor's daughter. And so it's like based on the movie, it's like she knew what was going to happen. She just wasn't quite sure how it was going to end. And so I was like, I was very intrigued to like watch her know things because like obviously she didn't know it because she talks about like she didn't know originally that her dad had kind of like screwed over Atreides. Because she was like, oh yeah, he was like a son to him and blah 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 blah. And he was so torn up when, he died, they died and stuff. And I was just like, but then she like finds out at some point that she's like, oh wait, this is all part of the plan. And like she like you see her have like the inklings that Paul is still
Mhm.
alive. And she's like, are we sure that he's not alive? And they're like, no, they killed him. And she's like, not so sure. And so I think it's very interesting that she was like, and I get it because she is a woman, and it very much seems like the women technically don't have a say, even though, they're behind everything. But
Mhm.
I'm like, so are all the women at least women of status? Are they all part of the like Gesserit?
No, not all
And,
women.
like, well, I meant like the higher up ones though.
Oh, I don't think so.
Because
From what
we
I
really don't see a lot
remember.
of like higher up women that are not a Bene Gesserit, really.
That's true too.
Like all the like main characters other than Shawnee, because she's from somewhere else. Like they're all that. And so I'm like, so is the baby, obviously now that she's had the worm juice as a baby, because I guess she was like a regular baby, but when she had the worm juice blood stuff, she was like,
A
no,
blue-eyed baby.
I'm an all knowing like an all knowing baby, and I'm talking to my mother in the womb. So I'm like, is she basically like a Bene Gesserit too? I mean, granted, only in like I guess blood relation at this point, but is she gonna be
Yeah.
magic? I have
Well,
questions.
she's gonna have lots of strange
Theories.
magical qualities. Yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna come
But
out and be like the Incredibles. She's gonna turn into fire, running really
Yeah,
fast.
baby Jack Jack. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's something I did hear that was different from the movie. So it's not a spoiler. It's just, I guess, what happens in the book versus what happens in the movie is that in the book, the sister in the future kills the Baron, but they had Paul kill the Baron in this one. So I guess they were just like, let's get him out of the way. But I do wish they would have kept Austin Butler's character alive. I would have been interested to see them like go at it again.
Not me like making my fanfic where they end up being best
They
friends and conquering the universe together. So I
have
can,
like a Harry Draco moment where they become
yeah,
besties at the end.
it's probably too late for that because, but
Can what do his powers do? Can he bring back people from the dead?
I don't know. I mean, he was, a psycho still, but I guess
I
that
mean,
was
yeah, he probably
yeah,
would
we're
not be good to
definitely
have
not
circumstances.
supposed
around.
to like him. Yeah.
But well, that's what I wish because I was like, wow, this is a really interesting character, and he is like so different from Paul, and like obviously the moral code is very much different because they've been brought up differently. And like it was like, oh, he was like a little excited because he was like, I'm actually going to be challenged doing these things. This is going to be fun for me. And so I was like, wow, that's really interesting. I'd like for him to be the villain in the next movie. But I have a feeling that the villain will be exactly who I think it is. I think the villain will change.
My lips
It's
are
very,
sealed.
very Attack on Titan
We'll
is the
see.
vibe that I'm getting,
Well, I'm
where the
curious to
protagonist
see,
becomes the
yeah,
antagonist.
curious to see how like this off-world conflict's now going to transpire. And I mean, there was even the arrival of other great houses to
Hmm.
Arrakis at the end as well. The ships are arriving, but still their Fremen being loaded into Arrakis ships. going off, and I mean, I
You want to
it
fight?
doesn't well, it doesn't make sense that they would be loading a bunch of people into these giant the transport ships to go engage the transport ships that are coming in to Arrakis, right? Because you wouldn't want to blow up, risk having one of your ships blown up with a bunch of Fremen aboard, who are
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, are
what's
they
the
just
deal?
like, are they going to move them to different parts of the existing planet? Because I'm like, the thing that I feel like works out for them is that they engage in like guerrilla warfare. They
Hmm.
know
They
the
hide under the
terrain.
sand.
Yeah, they know the terrain. They know how to work it. And all these people from other places, they don't know anything about this place other than there's worms. And so it would seem kind of silly for all these Fremen people who are pretty like, indigenous, really, especially in terms of how they fight and live. And so it would be silly for them to like just go up into space in a ship because it's like you are not on familiar terrain anymore.
Are they
They would be
going
better
up?
suited.
Yeah, and it seems like they're the transport ships that then get loaded into the big guild ships, the motherships, and
Hmm.
so maybe like they're going up to try to take over the mothership or something. That could be.
Yeah, that could make sense. Like if they go up there, because they take over the ship, which that was another thing with Princess Irulan. It was like because she knew what was coming, she was able to like barter for her dad not to be killed. Because she was like, "I'll marry you, just don't kill him. Like I'll do whatever you want, don't kill him though." So she kind of like had an inkling of what was going to happen. But yeah, I think that would make sense because they kind of took over the whole ship and got rid of everyone except for who they were going to kill. So I guess it makes sense to go up there and like take over the bigger ships. But I could also see them like using that to like spread out more, like go back to where they were, other than just being stuck in the South.
Yeah, yeah, maybe they're off to conquer. They have the ability to uh, navigate to another world and try to I don't know, do to mess shit up over on another planet.
Yeah, maybe.
Uh,
Well, especially because they still have the north part of the planet, like
yeah,
where Shawnee's from, and I assume people still live there. They were attacking them like in the middle part.
Yeah.
And that's why they went to the
Well,
south. So I'm like,
well,
I
where
can't
yeah, where's
imagine that
Arakeen?
everyone's been moved to the south.
Yeah, yeah, I guess yeah, the Harkonnens were ravaging all the sietches in the northern hemisphere. So yeah, it does seem that they've kind of forced a migration um, in doing so. But yeah, Arrakis is freed essentially, although the movie ends on this cliffhanger of
the holy war is
boiling
about to
war.
begin.
Yeah, so
And I mean, as if the prophecy works out the way it does, it's not gonna be good.
yeah, kind
It's
of
Be
not gonna go
blood.
well. Oh,
someone.
I don't know. I
Oh,
was like, did my computer freeze for a second? I think maybe
uh,
you cut out at the end of your
I
sentence.
screamed, "There's gonna be blood," and then that was like it from me.
She was like, "Oh no, I said the wrong thing."
Gonna be blood. All right, well, there will be blood in Dune Messiah, I guess it's
Yay.
because this two-part uh anthology, the this duology of films concludes the adaptation of the original novel Dune, and so the presumptive sequel continues to in the next novel, you know, the adaptation of Dune Messiah. So you have to read on to get the rest of the story.
Or you can call me up and I can just give you the major spoiler.
She's like, "I'll tell you
Uh,
everything you want to know." I did
yeah.
read that the director he does not plan to do anything after the three movies.
Okay.
That's
Because I
kind of
do think
nice.
there's more books after Messiah, but from what I've heard, they get weird.
They
So
get very weird.
yeah, I hear they get super weird, and so they're like, "Yeah, we're only doing three," and then I guess they'll do that spin-off show about
Okay.
it's like the prequel with the
Hmm.
Bene Gesserit and all that called Dune Prophecy.
Right, right.
It's going to be on
Dune Park.
Max.
Well, fun. Well, thank you both. I gotta get going, but yeah, just let people know who you are, and we'll start to wrap up here. Why don't we start with you, Bridget, if you have any final thoughts, just hand it to us now.
Justice for Austin Butler's character. Not really, but like, please. And then no, it was a really good movie. It definitely redeemed the Dune movies for me because the first one I was just perplexed. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. It's Bridget5246. That's Bridge with a T 5246.
And
Jody.
I'm Jody, and I'm not on social media right now, but I loved this movie and I'm happy we got to discuss it. And like, as you go to bed tonight, ask yourself, like, is it faith and spirituality and fate, or is it like real world scammers that are leading you down a path? Because I feel like this movie did a really good job asking that. And it's kind of something we should ask ourselves too, is like how our fate is being defined. But this was a fun chat. And I hope that we're still chatting when the third comes out because I'm already excited for it.
I know. I'm just glad it was a matriarchy. Like, come on, spread it around. I also want to be part of it. Also, Inside Out 2 comes out soon, and I want to see it. I'm very excited for it.
Cute.
I think the 12th next week.
Side out too.
I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, faith versus cynicism. I know to me, yeah, part of why the residents of the southern hemisphere are able to survive is due to their hardiness, instilled in them by their beliefs and their faith. I think that's a powerful motivator for people, and a community um, driver ultimately, of people's will to try to survive and hope for something better. So, this in some ways the story of profound hope and destiny and you know, overcoming the odds. But also kind of a cautionary tale of, you know, what exactly are you putting your faith in? And these things can lead to a lot of strife if they're abused, if they're pursued, um, in the wrong kinds of ways. And I think it all just comes back to the dilemma faced by the emperor when he describes Duke Leto's governing style. He doesn't believe that it's proper for a ruler to govern from the heart. It's just too capricious. It's too unpredictable, chaotic. But ultimately, if you're going to have, a true, yeah, and noble and honorable and just civilization, you have to have a sincere love for the people. So if not, I mean, there's a lot of cynicism involved in trying to become a ruler of a vast civilization. The emperor, the ego is involved in being an emperor or a ruler. The duke, you know, that can be very destructive. But Duke Leto was a very honorable man for a leader, and that kind of demonstrates the sort of ideal that we should strive for when choosing our rulers. Someone who it isn't in it for himself, but kind of found his way to it through honest means. Because Duke Leto, I watched I watched both films in preparing for the show, and Paul doesn't want to be Duke. He tells his father such, and Leto felt the same way. But he found his way to a leadership role ultimately, and you see a similar trajectory with Paul. But now you've got this ominous war on the horizon, so we'll see what happens.
We'll see
Um,
what happens.
I know. Well,
right.
you made the Pocahontas reference earlier, in this whole movie, it's the meme. These white men are dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really freaking me out because like Philip's saying all this stuff about how we choose our leaders, and I'm just thinking it's an election year, and I think it's probably a sign for me to log off
They
because
did this,
Well,
my brain is
they
starting
did
to
this on
spiral.
purpose.
Yeah.
They released
yeah.
this on purpose this year. Yeah.
Are there intentions? Are they in it for the right reasons? Yeah. Uh, and that's why people can be very cynical about politics. But yeah, uh, thank you for listening to the Thodcast, conversations about film and animation. And I've been Philip, your host, and thank you so much, Jody and Bridget. We'll see you next time on the Thodcast. But for now, have a wonderful week. Have a magical day. Warm hugs.